At least 6 o'clock, you stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with a presentation tonight.
Sure, I will turn it over to Mr. Cowan for a budget presentation.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so tonight, I'll get us to the number, or we will get to the number that we need to get our tax levy to the tax cap of 2.38%. All of this information was presented at the last meeting. On February 11th, we started with a budget, $27,389,000. Tax levy would have been 9.7 million almost, or 6.7% to balance it at that time. Our tax cap was 2.38%. So our goal this year, we exceeded the tax cap last year. We went to 5.5% to add some positions. Our goal, or my goal was, and I didn't hear any objection from the board, was to get us to that 2.38%. So we've been working towards that. At the last meeting on March 11th, we went through a number of items that brought us closer to that 2.38%. Those items that are listed here, a couple of them are increases in revenues. We're hoping for a 1% increase in our foundation aid or thereabouts. We've got a one-time miscellaneous revenue item of $100,000 that we're going to receive in 25-26. So that's there, keeping in mind that that's a one-time thing. It won't be available the following year. And then some reductions for either some adjustments to the BOCES once I got finalized numbers, some personnel changes that we know are going to happen, and couple of items in BOCES where we reduced the speech from 1.5 FTEs to 1.3, and an alternative ed slot. One student that we have in an alternative ed program this year that will be graduating, and at this point in time, we do not foresee anybody going to an alternative ed program in 25-26. So we removed that from the budget. Talking about special education, alternative ed, whenever we remove costs, we have to be careful that we are not cutting ourselves too thin. We always have some contingency in the budget should special education numbers increase throughout the course of the year, or a student need to go to an alternative ed placement. So we do have funds built into the budget for that for 25-26, as we do in every year. So really the only change that was kind of a gift that came to us in the last few days is a reduction to special ed placements. And we had two very high cost individuals, one discovered by Mrs. Perger. We have not been being billed for the individual, but it was kind of built into my budget. And she asked the question, has this person left? She found out the person has left the district. We checked, we have not been billed for the individual. And then another one that was also in a foster home was removed from that home and will be in another district next year as well. So two fairly significant individual costs. That saves us that additional almost $65,000 that we need to get down to that 2.38%. Any questions, any concerns from the audience or from the board on how we got there?
Charlie, where'd the 100,000 increase come from?
That is a revenue from our insurance, a one-time surplus that's available from the dental plan, actually. That is available we did it one time, I think it was in 14-15. I don't know if you recall, Tony, but it's a plan that there's a few districts that are a part of, us, Clinton, and the BOCES. And we took a look at those numbers with Margarita up at BOCES, and they're going to issue another dividend this year. So it's maybe once every 10 years, it'll happen, but it was one of those items that as the budget was we were going through the budget, I looked at it, I said, Margarita, can we take a look at this? And us, Clinton and BOCES all were in agreement with that.
Good news.
Yeah, that is for next year at least. Questions on any of the other items there?
So last year we used a pretty significant chunk of the fund balance. This year, it doesn't look like we're using any.
Well,
Or are we?
Fund balance, we appropriate 1,077,000. Yep. So I'll get to that on the next slide if there's any questions on this slide. Okay, if not, actually 2 slides from here, Mr. Jubin, but so with that, the adjusted expenditure budget would look like this. Salaries up 2.2%. We talked about, we know about a couple of retirements for this year, for 25, 26 that are being built in. So with those retirements, the growth is only at the 2.2%. We're happy with that. Benefits is up over 7%. We talked about the one major increase there is our health insurance. It's projected to go up 12% at this point in time. You know, that's up for discussion still. We're with a consortium, but 12% is hopefully will be the highest, and that mixed in with all of our other benefits, which includes TRS, ERS, workers' compensation, and our payroll taxes, gives us a total growth of 7% to our benefits in 25, 26. BOCES, with those couple of additional students that we found in special ed, is actually going down a little bit, is basically flat. So all of that really has to do with our special ed numbers, or as I mentioned at that meeting a couple of meetings ago, was our special ed count is very low from where it has been historically. So that's looking good at this point in time. Still is some contingency built in there. So it's not like if we have a three or four kids added to our special education count that we won't be able to cover them with expenditures. But at this point in time, we're looking pretty good on that. Contractual, another one that's up pretty significantly, over 100,000 or almost 6%. I mentioned this at the meeting in February. One of the items, the contractor for our snow plowing is not going to continue that in 25, 26. You know, he's done it at a very generous price, I'll say. You know, we bid it this past year. He was in the $30,000 range, basically taking a loss more likely than not, but contributing to the school district. Well, all of the other contractors bid in the $75,000 to $80,000 range. So that's the reason for the increase there. And we have one additional special education placement in a private placement, and that gets added in here rather than up in BOCES. So some of the savings that we see up in BOCES gets increased down in the contractual for private placements. The other items, well, that's down. That's we work with our financial advisor, Bernie Donegan's office. We look at where we are at with projects, where the borrowing is. So those numbers are pretty much set. So we will see a decrease in debt service. With that, we also see a decrease in building aid. So not all good news when we see decreases in debt service, as that is a part of the calculation for our tax cap. And athletics and co-curricular is in line with normal growth. The only one I skipped, the equipment, we do put $50,000 in there initially in hopes that we can keep that in there. There are some significant needs in our O&M department. There's always some needs for our instructional staffing as well. You know, they go to the foundation, they go to the PTO for a lot of things. But if there's some things that we can cover ourselves, we try to keep that $50,000 in there. At this point in time, it looks like we will be able to do that for 25, 26. So my recommendation is that we will keep that in there. Any questions on the expenditures? So how is that paid for? Again, state aid is only up 1.47%. There is a 2% increase to our foundation aid, but there are many aids, transportation aid, special education, BOCES aid. Our growth is only 1.5%, and that's increasing that by that $90,000 that we saw a couple of slides ago. A couple of other areas where there was growth, the other revenues, you know, we have seen nice increases to our interest income in recent years. It's now in the 4% range. It was in the 5.5% range a year and a half ago or so. But even so, by us being able to build some fund balance, interest income has grown pretty nicely. Foster care we bill for, again, that one-time $100,000 amount is built in there for 25, 26 as well. So I'm comfortable with the $1,050,000. I think this year we're going to be at about $1.2 million for other revenues altogether. Why don't we budget 1.2 million? You know, interest rates are declining at this point in time, so we can see some decrease in that. And also our foster placements are always a little bit unknown from year to year. So I don't really like to include that $150,000 for foster placements that we got last year. This year, we're probably going to lose some of that money. This tax levy is at the tax cap, 9,298,000. And then to balance it, the 1,077,000 is what we've left our appropriated fund balance at. And we appropriate a significant amount. And that's kind of built into the budget. I said, we know that we're going to, well, we hope that we're not going to spend all of our special education money. We have some room built into the budget. Typically, though this is here, we hope to not have to use any fund balance from year to year. Our expenditures may be under or over budgeted by, let's say, $400,000 or $500,000. Maybe our revenues under budgeted by $400,000 or $500,000. In the end, we hope to be close to break even. If we truly used $1 million, if we truly used $300,000 a year, I would be getting very nervous. And that was something that was happening in the district a number of years ago. $300,000 loss, $240,000 loss. We had to change the tide there pretty quickly. Otherwise, we would have been in a position where no money left in the bank and it would have been very difficult. So this is there, but we do build in, I'll say, flexibility in the expenditure budget as well as some room in the revenue budget. We underestimate, we hope, so that by the end of the year, we come up close to break even. For this year, we're probably looking at $100,000 to $200,000 net gain. Though we had appropriated $1 million and said that's what we need to balance the budget, we hope to really come in about $100,000 to the good. And one of the reasons school districts need to do that is because once your budget is adopted, you cannot spend a dollar over what you have budgeted. So if we budgeted this right to the dollar and said, we don't need this $1 million, go back a slide, $26 million, let's say, we budgeted that too. And we knew that they were all real expenses. We get in the middle of the year, we have some additional emergency expenses for repairs, for special education, for whatever they are. You cannot go over $26 million. So then you've got to say mid-year, what am I going to do? What am I going to remove from this budget to stay under the total appropriation that was approved by the voters? So there's the reason why most school districts do have at least some money built in as appropriated fund balance with the hope that they really do not need to use that money. Questions or comments on that?
What we built in last year, did we use it or did it just go back?
It's going to be hope, so I've always told people with budgets, you build your budget and then you throw the budget out and you start from zero on day one. You try to get every dollar you can in revenue and spend as little as you can in expenses. And at the end of the year, it's really actual dollars. So when we get to the end of this year, actual, I'm expecting, and I don't know the exact numbers, actual revenues, 25 million, actual expenses, 24,800,000. Don't touch your fund balance. Don't subtract from it, add the 200,000 to it. I didn't put a slide in here tonight for our fund balance. We will when we do the presentation for the budget, but we've seen some nice growth in our fund balance, and that was really part of the pandemic grant money that was available to school districts. So we've seen some nice growth up to about $3.4 million. We are, as of June 30th, 2024. We were, I think, $1.4 million 5 or 6 years ago. And that was part of the plan that the board had. They knew that this money was being available. We added some programs. We had some people, but we also had part of that. We're going to put some money in the bank because someday that grant money will not be available. So we've added to that. Our fund balance is healthier than it's been in prior years. Again, I didn't put that information on tonight, but we will. And the other side of that, as I've always said, is although it's healthier than it's been compared to most districts in our area, we're still at the very low end of fund balance compared to our total budget. So we're holding our own. I think that with the increase of the tax levy that we went out with last year, 5.5%, in my mind, initially, the goal was certainly to stay within the tax cap. And I think that was finally, that was the decision of the board as a whole. So that's why we targeted that 2.38% to come in at for 25-26. With that, the rest of it is just information. Here's where our taxes have been. The tax levy increases have been over the last 10 years. Couple of years that we exceeded the tax cap. That year at 2% was actually in excess of the tax cap, as well as last year, the 5.5. The average of 2.68 for those 5 or 10 years. Our proposal for next year is 2.38. That looks like this, we're back to here. Hopefully we don't need to do this. When we did this, there was a very specific purpose. We had 3 people that we wanted to keep. The board said, let's give it a shot. The community approved it. So we were very happy about that. it's very difficult, though maybe necessary from time to time, as I know you said in the past, Mr. Jubin, to say our revenue growth just isn't keeping up with our expenditure growth. If you can only raise your taxes 2 to 2.5%, and you're only getting 2% in the state, and your expenditures are going up 3, 4, 5%, something's going to give eventually. So that's something for the board to keep in mind. Certainly every year we go in with my mind of staying within the tax cap unless there's a very specific reason, but something to prepare for down the road for sure.
Let's get one question.
Yes.
So, the governor's, approach to funding the schools appeared to take a change this year for years to come. How does that project out for what we got to prepare for next year and the year after? And then after that, I think it follows
Inflation or
inflation,
something. Yeah. I think this year, next year, things will be because of, I think, November of 26 is her election. Things will be what they will be this year at this point in time. They will probably look a little better next year. And then regardless of what is said at this point in time, the year after you're elected, whether you're a new governor or a re-elected governor, I think that it's back to, you know, I'm safe for 2 to 4 years or 2 to 3 years. And probably the foundation aid is going to take a hit. I mean, I know that they've done this. They did a study last summer. I don't know if anything major or meaningful will become of that, but
I mean, if it keeps pace with inflation, it's gonna be more than 2.3.
that's a fact. Yeah. The way the inflation been.
Unless that changes.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, you know, there was a part of the formula for foundation aid that said it will go up whatever inflation was the year before. I think last year that would have been like 7%. And then they said, well, we're going to use a 10-year average. So it went down to 3.1%. So they manipulate, you know, there's only so much money. They can say whatever they want. You can hope that your foundation aid will grow 2 to 3% a year. And that's probably the best we'll do unless we get on formula. Other things we talked about already, the board has approved at the last board meeting a referendum to put for the proposition or approved an action item to put forth a proposition for the 2 diesel buses. Tonight they'll discuss and talk about potentially 1 electric bus. I think the message that we want to get across to the community is if both are approved, the diesel proposition will already be on the ballot in May. And if that's approved, we could buy 2 diesel buses. If tonight the board approves the proposition for the electric bus, that will be for 1 bus. So there will be 2 items on the to vote for in May. 1 vote for 2 diesel buses and the second one to vote for 1 electric bus. If both of them are approved by the community, then the board makes the decision. Are we going to buy 2 diesel buses or 1 diesel bus and 1 electric bus? The message is we are not buying 3 buses, I guess, you know. If that's what we need is 2 buses, we will buy 2 buses. That would be the way that we would put it out to the community should the board make that decision tonight. Is there a danger in that? There is, you know, the diesel bus referendum goes down, we're out of luck, but the community has supported bus propositions in the past. You know, they're 90% aided by the state. There's a replacement schedule that we have. We're hopeful that we can get the message out clearly enough that this is what we really need. We need 2 buses. And then lastly, the capital outlay project that I talked about last time as well, you know, there's $100,000 in the budget again this year. Replace interior doors in this school year, 24-25. We would do the same in 25-26. And that's just if the budget's passed, that's already built in as part of the general budget. There's nothing necessary on top of that that needs to be approved by the community. And I put this back up one more time. Just as a reminder, and I did change our resource, our special education numbers to put back in the 1 person that we are going to add in 25-26. So the comment and question that came up a couple of meetings ago is, you know, here's where we are at with here's our budget for 25-26. Is there anything else we're going to do to improve it? And I think if we look back at when the pandemic began, or when we started doing budgets after the pandemic, we had 94 instructional staff members. At the end of, as we go into 25-26, we would have 95.6. And you can see the movement. We've added art, ENL or English as a second language. guidance, we've added a math AIS, we've added music, we've added reading. We've had some decreases in our K-6 classroom teaching staff and our teacher assistants, primarily based on enrollment. So the programs within Sequoia Valley have, in my opinion, improved tremendously over the last 5 years. We can't necessarily add dollars and people every single year, but we've done what we can with what we have. And the idea for 25-26 is we'll bring that special education position back and we'll keep within the tax cap. Comments, questions? And that's it, really. What does this budget do? It maintains what we have this year. It adds a special education teacher. It provides the funding for a continuation of capital outlay projects and keeps the tax levy at the 2.38%. Next meeting, we will hope to provide the board with the details for them to adopt the budget that will be put before the community. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if we have an answer. We're reducing our debt. And we reduced it by 195,000, which is great. But because we do that, our tax cap for next year will be lowered.
No, we try to match up debt increases and decreases with building aid. So that, I've looked out 5-10 years and we know when a project's going to fall off. So
Well,
declines in debt are usually met with similar declines in building aid next year. We know what's going to happen in building aid next year.
so we can, as you said, next year would be similar to this year. We can anticipate a allowable tax cap in that 2.1, 2.3%.
I'm going to say within 2 to 2.5%. Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Good.
What, have any questions? What, good, thanks. Okay. Hey, Dennis.
That is all for presentations tonight.
Okay, we'll go into Board of Education Subcommittee reports, if any.
Sure. So the Facilities and Transportation Subcommittee meeting will be held April 1st, next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. The School Boards Institute, that showcase is coming up this Thursday night, so I don't think we will be attending that up at BOE. And Policy Committee will meet next April 8th before the next board meeting.
You good?
Yep.
Superintendent's report.
Sure. So just want to remind you that the high school recently had their stress last day last week. That was for the students. Picked different activities that went over very well. I'm very successful. I don't know. I think we mentioned the chess club's been meeting at the middle school, so it's great to have young interest in that. On Friday, Ms. Babby's media literacy class presented the students were tasked with deciding whether we should have a cell phone ban in school. So there were 3 groups of students now presented their thought, and it was interesting to listen to them because some of them actually supported the cell phone ban. Some of them didn't, and they all gave pros and cons for why it was a good thing. But it was just interesting to hear the student perspective on that topic. But appreciate Ms. Babby inviting us into that. We had a capital project planning meeting this afternoon. Mr. Cowan mentioned some of those topics, but we're looking at potentially bringing in Josh Ettinger from Day Automation for the next board meeting to present on the energy performance contract. I mentioned that energy performance contract in the last meeting, but he'll give you all the details and show you the potential costs and potential savings over the next few years. So we'll plan on it. I think they would, everyone will plan on inviting them to the next board meeting. Chamber Choir is performing tonight at the event in Whitesboro High School called Ball in the House. So that's why you see a couple of board members missing, and that a lot of our students are over there singing their hearts. There. Tomorrow night at the Rotary Club, they'll be recognizing a couple of juniors of the month. They do that every month. We have a Health and Wellness Committee meeting coming up on Thursday. So that's not one of the typical subcommittee meetings. In fact, we haven't had a Health and Wellness Committee here for a while, so we're bringing that back. And so thanks to Ms. Collins, who's going to join us there and offer her. As we mentioned earlier, this SBI program showcase will be held this Thursday night. So we have Mr. Review presenting on Stress Last Day, and Mrs. Staten and some of the students from STEAM Club will be presenting on these. Our SABA coordinator, Dalila Hasanagic, will be helping facilitate a career day in the middle school this Friday. So there will be 4 30-minute sessions where students can go and talk to different employers and just learn about different career fields. Decided to bring that to the audience.
We know what for fields are coming.
I don't know. Mr. Reed,
There's actually over 20 presenters coming, and the students actually selected their preferences in advance, and they'll get a schedule that aligns with their preferences, so.
So all of the students are gonna be able to
Yeah, fifth
participate?
through eighth grade, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. Very cool.
again, that's just one of the benefits of having that Saba person on the team. Spring sports season will kick off on Tuesday, and I believe our first home match will be a tennis match this Tuesday. On Wednesday, the Rotary will collaborate with the American Red Cross to facilitate a blood drive on campus. So we always love to Wednesday morning. And so Randy Wilson from the Rotary was here this afternoon signing up students. So just love when students sign up and start to become lifelong donors. Just a reminder, the BOTE's annual meeting is on April 2nd. I know many of you are signed up for that. And then finally, on April 5th, it's a Saturday, we will be hosting the OCMEA Elementary All County Music Festival in our gym. We're expecting up to 1,000, or just, attendees from the various districts. Over 300 students from the region will be participating. So they'll be performing, it'll be orchestra and then chorus and then band. Starts at 3. But they'll actually be here on Friday night and all day Saturday, just rehearsing, preparing, and then 3 o'clock. I did host that. And that is all I have for superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Before I get into the consent agenda, Charlie and Marie, when I get to item 8, if you could just elaborate that, so the board is prepared for any discussion, voting on that bus proposition. Okay, if there's any question? Thank you. I'll begin with, 7.1 through 7.14. 7.1 is looking for the approval of a substitute teacher. 7.2 is looking for the approval of another substitute teacher. 7.3 is looking for the approval of a retirement. 7.4 is looking for the approval of a resignation. 7.5 is looking for the approval of additional athletic appointments for the 2024-25 school year. 7.6 is looking for the approval of a leave of absence. 7.7 is looking for the approval of a long-term substitute teacher. 7.8 is looking for the approval of a child care leave of absence. 7.9 is looking for the approval of a donation. 7.10 is looking for the approval of policy updates. 7.11, is looking for the approval of our treasurer's report dated February 28th, 2025. 7.12 is looking for the approval of our minutes from the March 11th, 2025 meeting. 7.13 is looking for the approval of a resolution authorizing the payment of bills as approved by our claims auditor. And 7.14 is looking for the approval of the Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendation. Does anyone have any items of concern they'd like to pull for discussion?
I'd just like to make a couple of comments very quickly on 7.3. Julie Williamson teaching here for 23 years. That's outstanding as a certificate in the athletic classroom. So we appreciate what she's done. That's a long time to be going at it. So we wish her a long and happy and healthy retirement. After, of course, finishing the school year, we still have about 14, 15 weeks left. And then also at 7.5, the athletic appointments. So as you know, we've been hiring a couple additional coaches this year because if you were there at the parent coaches meeting the other night, that cafeteria was packed. And as Doug Jones, our athletic director, is here, and he told the crowd, our numbers in sports have been trending upward, which is, not the norm in local districts. They've been seeing, decrease in participation, especially with all these electronic devices and everything. So to see so many students coming out for sports, it's just very exciting. A little overwhelming, but for a second, providing.
Sounds good. May I have a motion from the board for approval of 7.1 through 7.14? Mike, Mr. Sacco, second. CJ, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're gonna move on to item 8, electric bus proposition. I know Charlie presented this in the budget presentation. Can you just clarify again what we are voting for specifically now?
Okay, so
As
this,
compared to what we did last month?
yeah, last month it was for the 2 diesel buses, a proposition that will be on the ballot in May. Be our budget. 2 diesel buses. If this is approved tonight, it would be a third proposition for 1 electric bus. As per the language, net cost of no more than $190,000 with the grants that are available to us. We separated it because of the discussion that we expect to have, I think, I was confident that the 2 diesel buses would be passed without issue. But now the board has the opportunity to give their input on the idea of an electric school bus. And as I mentioned while I was up there, we don't want the diesel bus proposition to go down. We need 2 buses is the bottom line. But I think it would not be me doing my job to say we can get an electric bus for the same cost of a diesel bus with the grants that are available now, when they really cost $400,000+. Understand, the board's decision, but that's why it's being brought to you.
So the proposition that was approved last month, there's no change there. That remains intact. Correct. We're adding a third proposition if this is approved, specifically for the electric bus,
Yes,
with the aid that we assume is attached to that.
yeah, well, the grants that are available, yes.
Okay.
And
Does everyone understand? Any questions?
I do, I think, is the aid in the grants bringing the electric bus the same cost as the diesel bus?
yes,
Like dollar for dollar, like right?
yeah, it's 190 in here, where the diesel buses are 180 each. But what is included in here was in the quote was the cost of the charger, which can be funded separately from another grant from NYSERDA. But in the end, we will not pay.
It's not out.
Yes,
And we will be equipped to support the electric bus.
we can handle 1 electric bus in our garage as it is set up right now.
So basically then tonight, we just have to vote yes or no as to whether or not we want to see the possibility of an electric bus being voted on.
We voted.
We're gonna give the voters an opportunity if we approve this. Correct?
Yeah.
It's still the voters' decision, not our decision.
Correct.
At this point. Are we ready? Okay. Let's see if we want to read the whole thing. Think we're good?
have to read it.
Okay, so the motion is basically to give approval for the following proposition to be submitted for voter approval at this time. Good? All right. Do I need a motion or do I just do? We need a motion to present this to the voters to let them make a decision as to purchasing an electric bus or not. Second? Is the president allowed to second? I believe so. I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Just to clarify. This is to get an electric bus at the cost of a diesel bus, correct, with the aid.
Yes,
All right, so, and the other vote is so it's a vote for 2 diesel or this, an electric bus and a diesel bus,
Yeah.
correct? Not and, it's or.
And it's putting it to the voters to let them choose what they want.
So help me out here. So, if it's no on the electric bus and the diesel bus, then what?
We get two diesel.
We get two diesel.
It's still have two votes on.
Correct, no, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Which they have.
That's, no, you don't get in.
You say no on the diesel bus? Did you mean yes on the diesel?
Somebody just, can you repeat that?
You said no diesel bus and no electric, there'd be no bus at all.
But there's a vote for diesel and diesel also.
Right,
There's two votes.
right.
So you can
So-
vote for two diesel or a diesel and an electric.
No, that's not yet. And that's, as I'm sitting out here, I'm like you. Whatever gets approved here, we gotta make sure that it's clear to the people going in to vote, because it's not very clear on kind of right now. I get it, it's,
Proposition, correct? If you put the diesel or the electric. in
Two
there.
bus propositions.
Right,
Either two
Right.
diesel or a diesel and an electric.
but that's not saying the diesel and electric. It's only if we get the approved electric, then you decide. Then it would be an electric and one diesel. If the electric gets approved, that's what I'm hearing out here. The
Yeah,
electric gets approved, it's gonna be one and one.
yeah,
Right.
But I'm not, we gotta make sure the voters understand that.
yeah.
Which we.
That they won't be, they'll vote yes, no to the diesel and yes to the electric and think we're only getting one bus.
Yeah,
If it goes no to the diesel and yes to the electric, we end up with one bus.
There was a caveat there that it still comes back to the board to decide,
If both are
even if,
approved.
even if the public votes yes and yes, the board can still decide to ignore the public electric, yes, and buy two diesel, yes.
I would vote no.
That's
If the
what,
voters want
That's
an
accurate.
electric
but that's what,
That's accurate.
so my recommendation would be just have two propositions, one for two diesel buses and one for diesel and electric. They vote no for one, yes for the other, or vice versa.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
That would be clear.
What we need to do tonight is to vote if we're gonna put this on the proposition. If this isn't on the proposition, we can't, Mike, we can't make a decision if we don't put this on.
No, I agree, so I.
You saying how we present this?
I would say nay, next meeting, you re-propose it as two diesels, yes or no, diesel electric, yes or no. And then you motion and say all yes or say all no, or whatever you're gonna do, and then it shows up on the ballot. That would be my recommendation.
Put a giant or
or.
in between them.
Yeah.
Two diesels or like, or
Or
That
put,
may-
or put,
diesel.
you know,
electric.
parentheses under each one of them with a little bit of words,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Because if it went yes, yes, then the board would have to make the decision on the split.
Sure.
This would make the community make.
And it should be the
Which if it goes
community.
yes, yes, you need either case, the board then. makes
But
the
just,
decision.
ma'am, just so you know, even if the board says no electric, the governor's gonna go like this and we're getting electric.
Eventually.
So, but the point is, I know I'm not supposed to talk to people, but I don't do that. We talk
No,
to
that's
people.
fine.
But no, the issue is, so we're getting a deal on this bus, but like. I've been talking about this for probably too long. If this board says no to electric, the governor's like, well, guess what? You can kick rocks, you're getting electric, and you're gonna pay $445,000. Am I understanding that correctly, Charlie?
Yeah,
If there are not grants
If.
available when
Okay.
time comes.
And now we also know that the governor is already backing off of electric buses already. That's already happened.
So the only thing that you gotta think about is once you go down this path, not for electric. But once you go down this path, you've mixed your fleet. So the maintenance and technical knowledge is very different. So you may have a bay ready to deal with it, but you may not have an individual ready to deal with it. So you're gonna have this mixture of technology, and to his point, you get a deal on this one,
What's the future?
the next one, are you paying $500,000 a piece? And how long can we sustain that? It's almost like they're, you know, I hate to use a drug term, but they're giving you a line so that you buy a bunch more line at the real price, you know?
No, Chuck, we already voted for one proposition
Or the diesel buses, last meeting.
for the diesel bucket, so we can't change that. That's calling for a proposition to approve two diesel buses. We're cast in stone, right? we've approved it, we're gonna have to, okay, so we can't change proposition one.
Or do we want to? I don't.
Right, that's gotta remain. So proposition two,
Should we change the way, how it's written, how it's laid out?
I think that's
Or
the
do
key.
we have to do it? Based on deadlines for making public notices of April 1st, or we can come back later this week. I guess.
I mean, it's clear to 5 people in the community how we would vote. But the rest of the community may be very misled, so.
Well, and the point you make very well. Is the district prepared to be able to support mechanically an electric bus,
A diesel bus we can,
not diesel electric?
or excuse me, an electric bus. And, you know, one, and we've talked with Leonard Bus. The heavy duty things that you don't do here for diesel buses, we obviously wouldn't do for electric buses either. So they would still be the brake, all the lighting and all the different things that our mechanics are capable of doing today. They would do on either a diesel bus or an electric bus.
minds will prevail. Let's come up with a solution.
So regardless, if we have two, if the second proposition reads a diesel and an electric bus, and that's approved, and the two diesels approved, it's still in the board's hands. Do you want the two diesels, or do you want a diesel and an electric? I don't know that we need to change that.
Can I just ask, so when we take this to the voters, right now there are gonna be two propositions that if they could vote for both. Is that the way it has to be, or can we change it so that they can either vote for one or the other?
See, that's what I thought this was, that you could, it's one of the other.
No, we're just allowing the public to vote on it. Yes. I mean, you guys recently approved us to go forward with the grants to get the grants.
Correct.
Right,
So now you're just approving to let the community vote on it.
right.
Well, I'm gonna have to go with the community. So. I ain't going to the community.
And that's what I believe we were doing anyway.
Well.
Just putting it on paper for them to
My thought
decide.
is, if this comes down and like,
Right, that's what I
And hang.
thought too.
and I could have got a bus for $275,000 cheaper, then that's something that I have to think about when I say yes, within the community. And decide what they want.
And what happens if they say yes to both?
That's back in the board's hands.
So if
That's what I don't.
here's my recommendation. If we have to put it on the ballot as you're voting for this, you can vote for both. I think maybe we need to make it clear to the voters that if they vote yes for both, it goes back to the board. So even though they have the opportunity to vote yes for both, maybe this will sway voters, but let them know.
Yeah,
Is there a reason why we can't do one or the other?
why does it have to go back to the
Yeah.
board if the voters of the community decide they want an electric bus and a diesel bus? Why would it go back to the board to say, well, yes, the vote, for the possibility of the fact that the board could say, well, that's nice, but you know what, we don't really want that, we want two diesel buses. What would be the point?
I think it's the way the proposition one's
Is worded.
correct?
It's, yeah, the board has the final decision, even if there were one proposition for two diesel buses and the board crisis happened, they could say, well, we're not gonna be able to buy any buses this year. So it will always come back to the board to make that final decision. But I fully understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
We just need to make it clear when individuals vote.
Yeah.
What they're voting in and what.
are you voting for a total of two or a total of three?
Either two
Yeah,
diesel
because
or
we're
a diesel
thinking
electric.
three, two
Yeah.
diesel and then one
No.
electric, so a total of three.
Well,
So it's a total of two.
No.
the fact is, if A and B were both approved, the board would have the authority to buy all three, but
Okay,
and that's where it's kind of,
okay.
the gentleman's agreement's the right word to say or
Right,
not,
I
but
get what you're saying.
we're buying two buses, you know? if they say yes to the electric bus.
The board's
then
been
the board
elected for
has
a
to say
reason.
loudly enough, it will be the electric bus, or they can say
The
tonight,
board needs to make the decision.
we don't want to do that, yeah. And if they don't want to buy the electric bus, then I think tonight would be the time to say no to this proposition. Rather than put it before the community and then be put in the corner.
So if that's the case, then I'm no. Because I vote no straight up right now if we had to vote on it, yes or no. I'm just looking at the savings if we have to. See, that's what I'm thinking about. So if someone's like, hey, you know, we could have saved 300 grand, but you were making it political. I'm trying to look at it the money, but I don't agree with it. I mean,
But that's your opinion, this is.
yeah, you're absolutely
This is-
correct. You're absolutely
We're
correct.
representing the
Yeah.
people, not.
So, you know, I mean, that's just the issue is the people have to decide yes or no on whether or not they want the buses. And then you're saying it comes back to us again at the end of the
At the
day.
very end, the board makes that call. No, but if the community says yes, and you have any thoughts that you might say no, then I would not say yes.
Yeah. Just basically, then you're just saying, well, that's nice that the voter said this, but we've decided not. That's really basically what it is.
But on the flip side of that, if the community wants an EV bus, and we don't even give them the opportunity. to
The
have an EV
opportunity
bus,
would be great, but I'm saying if it goes back to the board, is the board willing to support the voters who have said, yeah, we want an electric bus? Even if most of our board are like, yeah, maybe not so much. I'm all for trying an electric bus. I also understand the pros and cons. My only point is, don't give me an option to vote on something if I say yeah, and then it's gonna go back to a group of people who say, well, yeah, they said that, but they, you know, not so much.
I mean, I think if this state mandate or expectation or requirements gonna have legs. Now's this money is the opportunity to get into this, but if we think this is gonna keep getting kicked down the road because of political opinions and all that stuff, then, you know, the EV thing doesn't really need to be a big deal at the moment in time, but I have to believe in the state of New York that this is gonna have legs at some point in time.
And to be able to save, and to save the money, which is the grant we received. That's what really makes the most sense, besides the fact that, you know, I have my opinions on it, but the people have to make the decision. And so, you vote yes or no. On May, what's the date of this, the one, no, May 20th.
Okay, so let's finish our vote.
Yes.
We've got a yes and a yes to place this on the ballot,
Yes.
give the voters an opportunity, and by doing that, allow the grants to be applied towards the cost of the bus. Okay. Yes, CJ? In pain?
Yeah.
No? Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses, we've got 1 no. Okay? So it goes on the proposition, and then
We talked about it.
we decide based on the votes. Okay, whatever criteria we use, we look at the results of the voting, and the voters will decide, and we either acknowledge the respect of the voters, or the board has a choice to say no. Am I right?
You're correct.
Okay. All right, you're good, Mr. Staton?
Good, thank you.
All right. We will move on to miscellaneous topics. Yeah, go ahead. Any old business from the board? Okay. Miscellaneous topics, Board of Education. Public to be heard. Any comments from the public? We respect your input during that discussion. It's very healthy for it.
I got a comment.
Yes,
Well, or suggestion. So, our region is undergoing, you know, I would say a transformation to some degree in its economic state with what's happening, you know, downtown with the hospital and with what's happening in Marcy with, the pad plants, that sort of thing. So inevitably, as that progresses forward, they're trying to draw talent to the area. hospitals doing that, trying to get different types of doctors from outside of our area to come here and live. And same thing's happening, up in the Marcy Holly area. So have we thought about a way, and I think this is something we need to partner with Town of Paris to market ourselves to these incoming tax base? Whether that's 100 families a year or 1,000 families a year. I don't think it should be on the burden of the school, but the school has a lot to offer, because your choices, if you work in, the Marcy area, the chip plants is very, very small school in Oriskany, a very, very, very large school in Whitesboro, a very, very small school in New York Mills, very, very, very large school and city school in Proctor, and a very, very large school in New Hartford, and we have a tweener school that you come to school here, you're probably going to be able to play sports. Some of those other schools that are big, you won't, you'll get cut. And I think that, gives us an opportunity to, market ourselves to these, possibly moving, incoming individuals to relocate here and build a house. I get we need property for sale and that sort of thing, but there's plenty of open fields if the farm base or the owners, whatever you want to call it, want to, sell a piece of property. We've got water, sewer, and gas. Okay, which anybody who's going to build a house is going to look for those three things. They don't want to put in a septic. They don't want to put in, a well, and they definitely want gas because electricity is not cheap. So I really think we should look at, create a task force, if you want to call it, with the Town of Paris, and figure out a way to pool some money. So you'd have to add it to the budget, obviously, to create an effort to market our region to these people that are real, and try to get bigger tax base for us to help our budget in future years.
It's a very good point.
And there's plenty of consultants out there that would do that for us. You just gotta pay them. And they bring your name to the top of the list, Google's a big one. Pay a little bit of money. They search something, best schools, whatever. Great place to live in the Utica area. The point can come right to the top. All you gotta do is pay. That's just a start. There's plenty of ways to do it. That's all.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we good? We have no executive session? Okay, we need a motion to, do you want the board to review, any of the updates that you have on the agenda? We're good.
So yeah, I just want to comment on the teachers getting tenure here, a bag, Patricia Murphy, this many, and we are working. It's always, a privilege when we get to give that protection to the teachers, especially when they're quality teachers like this. Appreciate having you in the district. I think anyone that knows these teachers, you can support the work there, also the quality of the work. Better district staff.
Need a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Mr. Familiar, all in favor? You stand adjourned. Thank you, folks.